Hey, 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 welcome to this week's edition of Terry Messenger's Genius Zone. And do you know what I love about doing this podcast the most? And that is that every time I meet a new coach, healer, or leader, I am learning something new. And what I can't wait to share with you on this show is a woman who spent over 18 years in corrections as a senior community corrections officer. In other words, in layman's terms, a parole officer. Now, this lady, she has 2 degrees. She certainly doesn't look like what you would expect a very strong, stoic parole officer to look like. So you're going to be very surprised and enlightened for the greater good when you see this beautiful lady. She's got 2 degrees in psychology and criminology. And, you know, being in the deep frontline experience, she knows all about what it's like to go through, you know, relationships that are toxic. Now, contrary to the fact that we might think that a bad relationship is where there is, you know, physical violence, she's going to talk about the wheel of the power and control. And this is going to really be empowering. But when you stay to the end, you're also going to get a special technique. She's going to do something that is so powerful. It is, if you know what emotional freedom technique is, if you know what neuro-linguistic programming is, well, think about this on steroids. And this is what you've got to look forward to. So grab yourself your favorite drink. And with no further ado, I am going to introduce the incredible, the great coach, Carly Evans. Hello, Carly. How are you?
Hello, thank you. What an intro. I'm great, thank you.
Awesome. And of course, you're all the way in.
Yep.
Perth, Western Australia.
Same place.
Awesome. So we will get to meet each other very, very soon. And it is great to have you on the show, Carly. And, you know, it's really interesting that you obviously got into the corrections industry, because I always feel that people tend to have a passion for what they do. And even though sometimes it doesn't quite make sense, like I think you had some moments where you spoke to me backstage about being in the court and suddenly hearing other people's, you know, domestic violence and things that were going on and thinking, oh my gosh, and relating to it yourself. But what inspired you to become a corrections parole officer?
Growing up, I had several family members who were cops in London. And one of them worked for Scotland Yard Murder Squad and the Flying Squad, which was the drug squad, I think. And I was just always fascinated with that. I was always fascinated with the Cray twins. So London gangster mob bosses. It just always fascinated me growing up. And so my bookshelf was like this interesting contradiction, it seemed, between serial killers, true crime, and hippy dippy energy work stuff, and that's never changed. Wow. So I kind of always wanted to get into helping people, but the interest in crime was really, really heavily there. So it kind of became a natural thing to study psychology and then forensic psychology at uni, and I kind of ended up in the role of a trainee probation officer in Brixton in southwest London, which was like a really meaty playground for serious violence, serious drug and addiction issues, lots of mental health problems, and kind of any domestic violence issues as well. And everyone said to not go to this particular office after we finished our training. Our training was 2 years. We kind of worked in an office and we studied a degree. And then you kind of got to select where you wanted to work. You kind of put your top 3 down, and everyone said, don't go to Stockwell Road. It's the worst place to work. So I put that as my number 1, because if it's the worst place to work, that also means it's the most interesting, right? So I've always been up for it. And I absolutely loved the job. I loved it. It was everything that I wanted, because I wanted to be kind of counseling people, but not be a counselor. I didn't want to be a psychologist, but I wanted to study psychology. I didn't know what it was at the time that was putting me off just doing those amazing roles. There's nothing taking away from those amazing roles. But later on, when I found coaching, which kind of really, it didn't really become a proper industry until even 97. So it wasn't really a thing that I had ever come across while I was kind of deciding what to do as a job. But when I found coaching, I realized the reason that I didn't want to become a psychologist or a counselor was because I didn't want to just sit with people talking about their problems for an hour. I'm all about solution-focused therapy. So for me, being a trainee or parole officer, kind of ending up as that with that being my career, really made a lot of sense, in that I was doing informal counseling. I was working with serious criminals who, a lot of them did want to change their lives. And my kind of biggest interest still now is what makes people's brains go there. Like not what did you do, but what happened to you to make you do the things that you've done.
Wow.
That's what I love in coaching as well. It's all,
wow, yes.
You do so many different things. You're a coach, you're a parole officer, you teach Reiki. Aren't they all really different? And for me, it's all the same shit. It's helping people clean out the darkest corners of their mind so they can step into the truth of who they really are. And ultimately, I left corrections because people are mandated to be there, and a lot of people don't really care about changing.
Yeah, well, this is true. No, I love what you just said. And I do feel that, there's that correlation, and, it reminds me a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle where you kind of like, you're doing this and you're doing that, and then all of a sudden everything kind of falls into place. It's like it makes sense. But, it's interesting how you mentioned to me that you were, sometimes standing in the court and recognizing that you were living what you were actually helping other people through. I mean, talk about the law of attraction, or maybe I don't know what you'd call it, but can you explain that? Can you kind of talk us through that?
Yeah, I had my first realization that I was in an abusive relationship essentially in 2008. So I started as a probation officer in 2007. In 2008, I trained in running a domestic abuse program to DV client. I prefer to call them clients, not offenders. We're all offenders in some way, really. And so as I remember exactly where I was sitting in this room as we were being trained in domestic violence, and what they flashed up on the screen was what's called the power and control wheel. Now, this was created by Duluth in Minnesota, and these, I think they've really been they've extended these wheels massively since then. There is not just the power and control wheel. There's the equality wheel. There's lots and lots of different wheels in different languages, in different and for LGBTQI communities. And they've really broadened it since 2008. But back then, I remember looking at this power and control wheel, and along the top, there's physical violence as just this one thinnish line, really. And then it's kind of, if you imagine like the wheel of life is split into kind of slices almost.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the wheel of life, but more the wheel of violence. And so people think that domestic violence is just about physical violence. And that, when I saw the power and control wheel, which is all about coercive control, which was never really talked about massively back then, but it really is being talked about a lot now. When I saw that wheel, I just thought, holy shit, that's my relationship. There's so many things on there that are going on in my relationship. And at the time, I was in a relationship with a guy who had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder during our time together. He was in psychosis for the first half of our relationship. And then he was in major depression for the last half of our relationship. And there was so much in that power and control wheel. I was going to work at the Stockwell Road office in Brixton, And then on my lunch breaks, sometimes I was going to see him in a psych ward round the corner. It was a pretty messed up period of time in my life. And I just remember looking at all the different things on this wheel, which include financial abuse, coercive control, emotional abuse, mental abuse, manipulation, using children as pawns, all these kind of things. And I just had this aha moment. I was like, that's what's going on in my relationship. Does that mean that I'm being abused? And even still then, I mean, that was one of many future even abusive relationships, long-term abusive relationships, where I was still never hit. And I still didn't necessarily identify it as abuse when it was happening. So I became an expert in domestic abuse in my career and ended up working with really, really seriously violent, dangerous offenders who do that, who use all the tactics of coercive control on that power and control wheel. So
we've got 8, haven't we? We've got 8, and I think you mentioned, most of them. So we've got using intimidation.
Yep, threats.
Threats, using emotional abuse, shaming, guilt tripping, using isolation. Well, what's that all about? What's the isolation thing?
Yeah, so this happens in so many relationships. So at the start of a relationship where you're being essentially love bombed, even in healthy relationships we do this, right? Where you're in lust for that person and you're giving them loads of compliments, and that's how even these unhealthy toxic relationships start. But the love bombing is quite obsessive, and then you're hooked in, you're reeled in by that person. And then gradually over time, they'll just start making comments like, oh, I don't like the way that friend talks to you. Oh, I don't think your best friend has your best interests at heart. Oh, I don't think your dad likes me very much. And, you'll be so in love with that person at that point that it will be harder to spend time with the other people that you love, because of the consequences that then occur with your partner, as in having big blow up arguments, or getting that passive aggressive, they don't speak to you for 3 days, or whatever it might be, so gradually over time it's harder to still be you. People become like themselves because they stop being who they really are. They stop doing the things that they love. They stop wearing the makeup that they like wearing, or the clothes that they like wearing. They stop seeing the people that they like hanging out with, all because their partner doesn't like it. And if they do those things, it just becomes such a drama that it's just easier not to do them anymore. And then in that way, you become really isolated, and it's just about you and your partner then.
Right. That's interesting. That's a really interesting one. And of course, minimizing. I think this one is sort of, it can go very under the radar, where, even if they doubt you, you've got that partner that tries to sort of instill that self-doubt, like you're being silly, you're just making it up, minimizing your own ability to believe in yourself, I suppose.
Which is basically gaslighting, right? And minimizing, justifying, victim blaming. It's all in your head. You're being crazy,
Yes.
And there's also systemic gaslighting too, right? So a woman will go to the doctor with symptoms of really vague symptoms that could be anything. It could be low iron, it could be burnout, it could be anxiety, it could be depression, or she might just be in an abusive relationship and be displaying all these symptoms. And then suddenly she gets diagnosed with something like depression or anxiety, gets put on medication, and then her partner uses that as a labeling tactic. Oh, see, I told you you're crazy. Or we'll talk to, like, how many times have you heard, or has the audience heard about my crazy ex-partner? The amount of guys that say, oh, my ex was a right crazy bitch.
And they say that's a red flag now. Apparently, if you hear someone going, oh, my crazy ex-wife or my crazy ex-husband, apparently that's actually a red flag. Watch out for that person. Because what is it? What would you call that, apart from, is that narcissistic, do you think? Are these kind of narcissistic behaviours?
Yeah, it can definitely be a trait of narcissism for sure. We've all got narcissistic traits. It's on a spectrum, but when you've got that, when you hear that one person who all their partners seem, and I could now put myself in this position, right? Because I talk about all my relationships being unhealthy, but when you hear someone saying, oh, my ex was just a crazy psycho. My ex was, she was a slut. She was an alcoholic. She was a junkie. She was a shit parent, whatever it might be. It's like, okay, but there was also you in that relationship, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, that's right.
was she, where did all those behaviors come from? Because I do see a lot of victim survivors of domestic abuse with addiction issues, with unhealthy coping strategies, with on medication for various diagnoses that they've been given, when actually a lot of it is a trauma response and a coping tool and a survival tactic.
Yeah.
So there are different ways of talking about your ex-partners where you can be respectful, and even if they've treated you in a not great way, I take full ownership and responsibility for the fact that I attracted those partners and that I stayed in those relationships for so long.
Absolutely. Look, I think, yeah.
Because users will use you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel that there's a lot to be said about the parent that holds back and doesn't speak down about their partner. And there's a lot to be said about the partner that speaks down about the partner as well. And I think this is where number 5, using children. And this is like, to me, this is just one of the lowest things you can possibly do, to drag your kids into a situation, because even like, we'll go to radio now, the guy, do you deal with people where the shoe is on the other foot? Because I can tell you right now, this guy, he's been in this situation, and I know this is just going to open up a can of worms for him, but where he lost his children, and all of these elements happened where obviously it's not about the man abusing the woman, but where she has, deprived not just her kids, but him as well in the situation. I know he won't mind me saying it because he's quite public about it. But, what are people using their children for? Are they using them like to sort of like blackmail, or, as
it's essentially, it's still all pound control, right? Like when they're not together as partners anymore, they're still bonded because they're parents to the same kids. And so that's the way that they can still get power and control over their ex-partner. And, especially when a new partner comes on board, things might kind of seem to go okay with co-parenting for a while. And then if a new partner comes on board and they're really, really jealous, then the parenting arrangement will all go to shit. And, I feel so sorry for kids in that situation. I mean, children's court, family court, whole different ball game to criminal court. And I could never have worked in that system. It's just awful hearing how kids are growing up, being, essentially being fed lies and stories about the other parent, and sometimes believing it, sometimes siding with the parent who's saying the lies. Because when you grow up with a narcissistic parent, especially, they're extremely good actors, and a child will learn to essentially manipulate the situation themselves, because that's also a strategy and a coping tool, a survival mechanism, where they understand that if they what's the word, fawn, essentially. So now there's, there used to be just fight or flight. Now there's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Fawning is really about kind of going along with the narcissist's version of events to give yourself an easier life. Because if you don't do that, there's punishments for them when they're staying with that parent. And it's so, I've seen so many friends in that situation as well. It's so toxic and awful. The abuse doesn't end when the relationship ends, when you're a parent, unfortunately. It's so, the justice system is not a justice system. It's an evidence system, and the family court it's massively archaic, and overrides any anything that happens in criminal court too. So I had so many really dangerous offenders on my caseload who should not have had any time with their kids at all, because, you know, their kids had seen them try and strangle their mother in front of them, had watched them try and kill their parent, you know, and had abused the kids in various different ways, may not have physically punished them, but lots and lots of emotional and mental abuse. And they should not have been around those kids. But the family court system believes that there should be 50-50, you know, shared custody, that both parents should be in their lives. And so you have someone who's extremely dangerous and a violent person, and who could put the kids at risk, who is subject to a family violence restraining order that has the children written on it, on the order, to protect them too. And family court can override that as an order. And it's disgusting. It's
just
one of the many things that just rattled my brain massively when I did that job.
It's a crazy world. And it's sort of like the last three: using male privilege or gender power, using economic abuse. Like what sort of, is that where you're controlling finances, or is that?
So if you imagine that the partner has set it up, so the partner has set it up so that the mother, when she has the kids, has no job, or maybe has no education. Maybe they've got together young. She didn't finish school. She had the kids. She's never had a job. And then he is controlling all the finances because he's the one making the money. And maybe all her Centrelink payments go into his bank account, or, you know, he controls her. He pays for her phone. He pays for her car if she's got one, you know. So if someone else has full control over all of those things, you have no independence. So leaving that situation is really difficult. And there's so much judgment around women who stay in abusive relationships. Like, why doesn't she just leave? The better question is, why doesn't he stop abusing her?
That's
a question to ask. And so if she's got no economic independence, and maybe she's not from this country, maybe she has no community here, maybe she's just got him and the kids. Like, what do you do? What would anyone do in that situation? How do you get the money together to be able to leave and to get, I mean, rent is so expensive, let alone buying your own house when you don't have a job and you don't have any money. So how are you supposed to do anything except for try and get into a refuge, which is temporary? You know, there can be a lot of help out there, but there's also a lot of people who need that help. And so there are wait lists for everything. So that's what economic abuse is all about. And then using male privilege, there is an amazing book that I feel like every single person on the planet should read, including guys. And for women, this is really, really angry making. It's called Sexy But Psycho by Dr. Jessica Taylor. She's in the UK. Oh, it's an amazing book, but you'll definitely get angry. I definitely got angry.
Psycho, I love that.
But Psycho, and it's an amazing book. And she basically talks you through the history of what it's like to be a woman. And it wasn't really that long ago in the grand scheme of history that we were legally men's property. We weren't legally able to vote, have a job, you know, own property. And so I'm a big fan of energetic, you know, what we hold in our cellular memory, you know, and you think it's an intergenerational trauma, but there's also cultural trauma. There's also all these threads that have come down, and it's not that long ago that we were legally men's property. When we weren't legally men's property anymore, then we were witches and burned at the stake. And then when that wasn't a thing, and I was probably burned, but I came back as a witch in this lifetime. And then when that didn't happen anymore, because it couldn't happen legally anymore, then we were labeled as hysterical. And literally the intervention for that was giving us hysterectomies, when really all we had was it was that time of the month, or we were going through. How crazy is it that these things ever happened, right?
Did you read the book, The Hysterical Woman?
No, that's a good one. I'll
I didn't either, but my husband, Ian, always talked about that book, and it was about the hysteria and the hysterectomy, and all tied in with that, and why it's so important for women to have that part of them. But I was always very curious about it. But he said that the book did walk off his shelf because it was quite a popular one. But
Right.
that sexy and psycho one, I'm definitely going to be
honestly, because when you
into
read
that.
it, you actually realise how these cultural attitudes are still so deeply ingrained, and how women are still labelled as psychos, and how women are labelled as sluts if they like sleeping with a few guys, whereas a guy is a player and that's a cool thing. There's so many different threads in that, and there's so many, it just feeds into so much just male enticement attitudes around women, and guys that were supervising on parole would even say things to me like, when they're explaining about what their ex is currently up to, what you women are like. I'm like, really? Tell me what us women are like.
Yeah.
Holding up my sleeves, and I'd be like, let's have a chat, shall we?
Yeah, exactly. To talk about generalizing, hey?
Oh my
and of
God.
course, the last one was number 8, was using coercion and threats, which I feel like you've really sort of covered anyway. But but is it possible that people, when you see this wheel of power and control, is it about the fact that they've got them all, or is it just it can be in there by having 2 or 3? Because you look through it and you go, oh yeah, I can see that person, or I can see that person, and you can see different elements, and maybe not all of them, but do people actually have all of those?
I've definitely met people with all of them. Yeah, 100%.
Wow.
Yeah. My caseload after 18 years in the job was primarily people that were never going to change. So they did employ all those tactics. And also, when you think about the victim, rescuer, perpetrator wheel, this can also kind of, they do cross over, and a victim, rescuer type, helper type person, like narcissism is the opposite of being an empath, you can also turn into a perpetrator and use the same kind of tactics that are on the power and control wheel as a survival mechanism. So ultimately, these unhealthy, abusive relationships don't bring out your best self. Nobody is their best self in that kind of relationship. And so you become a shell of yourself, but you also become a person that you don't even like anymore. Someone who speaks to your partner, in a reactive way instead of an assertive way. You're constantly reacting instead of responding. So you do become partly perpetrator yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. You live it and you become it. It's just how it is, And I can remember hearing a saying once that I don't want to necessarily marry the better man out of the two, but I want to marry the man that makes a better me. And I thought, that was an interesting concept, that, who brings out the best in you, and what that means, and how we change, because we can have complete, let's face it, with who we are rubbing shoulders with, who we are living with, and everything will have an impact on the way that we are, our personality, the way we behave, the way we feel. And if we were going to roll all of this into one, you being such an incredible coach, and I feel that word is probably very underestimated for you. I feel like that there is a much bigger and broader term, because and when I say this, that the self-love pillars that you have obviously lived by, and what you believe for radical acceptance, unshakable boundaries, authentic expression, recognition and release, and even prosperity and wealth, and embodying the shiny you. And let's face it, we all want that, right? Who doesn't want to be that shiny, prosperous, wealthy, released, authentic expression of the person that we are, with unshakable boundaries and radical acceptance. And yet this is what your master key is, and it's all around self-love.
It is.
Please explain.
Yeah. So this was something that I came to much later in life. And I started doing personal development stuff when I was 21, and I'm 44 now. So it's been quite a while. And I have just relentlessly, constantly worked on myself while also building my business and working with other people. And I came from a healthy, loving family. I have generally always been a confident, happy, outgoing person. I love fun. I've got lots of humor in my life. I've got amazing friends. I find it really easy to talk to people and make friends. I've had an amazing career. So a lack of self-love and self-worth was not an obvious thing for me to work on at all. I wouldn't have identified with that until I was listening. I remember I was living in Two Rocks at the time, and I was walking on the beach, I think, and I was listening to a podcast, and it was actually about money. And back then I was in a financial hole. I was like 53 grand in debt. My house was in mortgage collections, but I was earning lots of money. And I was like, where is it all going? I was being financially a partner. That's where it was all going. But I was also allowing that because I had crap boundaries, people-pleasing tendencies, and I was letting myself be financially abused. So she said in this podcast, your wealth will only grow to the extent that you do. And it was like a bing. And there was another podcast that I listened to that day, and I had another aha moment, and I couldn't remember what it was about, but I had this realization that my self-worth was the problem. My self-worth was the reason that I kept attracting these toxic relationships into my life. And it's like over the course of my years in personal development, I had been able to set boundaries with friends, with clients, with colleagues, but not in relationships, not in intimate relationships. It was like the piece of the puzzle that I couldn't seem to get right. And I was just constantly working on myself, trying to make the relationship better. But you can't, it's just like sprinkling glitter on a turd, isn't it? If you're in a shit relationship, you can't make an unhealthy relationship a good one unless you're both working on it together. So there's me trying to sprinkle, I would like just glitter bombs all the time, just trying to make everything shinier. But I was missing the biggest piece of the puzzle. I needed to do Project Self-Worth. And that's what I called it at the time. There was a few of my girlfriends at the time who ran businesses over in the UK who were also experiencing similar things. And so I said, let's get together and just work on ourselves. Let's turn ourselves into the project, because we're so used to rescuing other people and enabling other people ultimately, that let's just turn inwards. And not that we weren't working loads on ourselves, but I was like, fuck everything else, excuse my French. Let's just turn it into Project Self-Worth for a change. So I built up this Project Self-Worth playlist in YouTube for myself. And it is full of EFT tapping. It's full of subliminal audios, affirmations, hypnosis. There's even like yoga for opening up the heart chakra. There's all this stuff in there. And I just did it like a mofo all day long, just focused on that. Wow. And anything found on YouTube that was remotely related to self-worth, like, tappings for you're worthy, you are good enough, but also dealing with difficult people, having difficult conversations, because as someone who has a lack of self-love, you don't speak up for yourself. You don't speak your truth. Your voice is blocked when it comes to conflict. You enable people's behavior. You don't speak your mind when you really should be. And so you tiptoe around other people's emotional responses. Yes. So there was loads of that kind of stuff in this playlist as well. And so I just did it. Constantly worked on my self-love stuff, not even really understanding where it came from for a really long time, where these self-worth issues would come from. And so after a couple of years of doing this playlist, I was in a relationship with a guy for 8 years. We were living in Two Rocks, and he just used to speak to me like I was a shit on the bottom of his shoe. Honestly, now I look back on it and I just think, would I even want to be friends with this person? I wouldn't. He's not worthy of being anyone's friend, to be honest. And I would, he would say something and it would hit me, and even up until recently, I still had his voice in my head if I was cooking or hanging the washing out or putting the bins out. You know, it's like you're messing it up, you're doing it wrong. Why are you doing it like that? Constant beration of me. And what would happen normally is he'd say something to me and it would just hit me in my solar plexus and I'd be like, ouch. And then I'd go away and I'd do laundry or something. And my intention was to go away and think about it, because I'm a very kinesthetic person. When I feel something, before I can put it into words, I really have to reflect on it for a while. Some people see that as running away from the situation, but I'm like, I need time to get my head together, you know? So I would go away and try and get my head together and think about what I should say back to him. And by then, the moment had well and truly passed. He was in a better mood and I wouldn't want to rock the boat.
Oh, okay, yes.
So that was life for a really long time. And then the day that I realized Project Self-Worth was working was, he said, I can't even remember what he said to me. It was something pretty standard for him. He said something to me and I turned around and I said something back to him that was really assertive. It wasn't passive aggressive, it wasn't aggressive, but it was letting him know I'm not willing to tolerate that, how you speak to me like that anymore. And I was so shocked by what came out of my mouth that I literally turned around to see who said it, because I because I didn't even have to think about saying it, which was so good for me. I didn't have to go away and do laundry and think about it and let the moment pass. It just came out. I was like, oh my God, where did that come from? And he was stunned.
Wow.
I think we were both as stunned as each other. And that's the day that I realized it was working. And that was like the start of the end of our relationship. You know, there was still a way for me to go, because I'm the kind of person who, if I'm committed to someone, I will literally give it my all until I've run myself ragged trying to make it work. Which, you know, I should have left probably in the first year, not 8 years in. But I ended that in 2018. And the next one was like a whirlwind, where it was another abusive relationship, but really not at all obvious in the first few weeks, but really, really intense, really short ultimately, but broke when I left that 8-year relationship, I just felt so relieved, relieved. I realized I'd fallen out of love with him so many years ago. And when this 8-month relationship ended, I was broken beyond belief. I'd never been that heartbroken before. And I had all this core wounding coming up about abandonment and rejection. Really, really, you know, like personal development stuff doesn't necessarily get easier. When you get to the deeper layers are more hectic, but you become more willing to deal with it, because you know, wow, if this is really, really heavy, there's massive lightness on the other side of this when I clear it, when I heal it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I just didn't understand where this abandonment and rejection came from, because all my psychology training taught me this should come from childhood. And all I remember is growing up in a healthy, loving, stable family. Yeah, we had our issues, but it was a really good family unit. And I love my bits. So I literally had to call my mum and say, can you tell me about what I don't remember from when I was a baby, from when I was a toddler? This is what's coming up for me right now. This is where it should come from, but I don't get it, because that's never how I felt. I've never felt abandoned by you. I just felt loved. So she then recalled, because she had literally forgotten the fact that I'm the eldest of 3. And my brother was born 15 months later. My mum was having a really hard time, postnatal depression, double pneumonia, having a really rough time with lots of different things, and couldn't cope with 2 kids. And so she's from Holland originally, and she was living in the UK with my dad. But to help out, my very loving grandparents came and picked me up from Holland and took me to Holland for 3 months, 6 months. My mum doesn't even remember, because she was just in a fog. And she didn't see me during that time. She doesn't even know if she spoke to me during that time, because, you know, mobile phones weren't a thing. And then I said to her, what happened when you got me back? And she said, Carly, I just realized it was the worst thing I ever could have done, because you couldn't look at me for weeks. And when she said that, something just in my heart just broke for baby Carly. I just thought, just like, how awful must that have been for her to get her first very much wanted child back, very much loved and missed child back, and I couldn't look at her for weeks, which is that's a I don't trust you, you've abandoned me thing.
Yeah. And you found it. That's so cool. I love that because you did your study, and this is what I love about NLP. And we're going to jump into the modality now, because it can go to that root of the problem and literally pull it out. And you did something very powerful through your psychology, because you did detective work and you were able to ascertain that, hang on a minute, this is what it looks like, what, rejection and abandonment looks like in a small child. And and it's sometimes it's not even it's the way we perceived it, like that. So that small child may have really missed her mum and not understood it, where the mother may have needed that time, but then it doesn't take away from the fact that that is exactly how it was. And the fact that you were able to discover that as well, which is incredible. And I know that this is what you're doing for people, that you've got such a wealth of knowledge and you've got so much experience, and I feel that people can come to you and feel like they can enter into your space without any judgment, and know that it doesn't matter what they've done, where they've been. You look at what was the reason you did that, rather than, oh, you did that. And I feel that that is something that is so, so, so special. However, we are going to honor our promise, and we are going to move into our magic modality. So tell me how you'd like to set this up. Do you want to set this up so you're speaking to you're going to be speaking to the whole audience that gets to listen to this anyways, or do you need me to answer any questions?
What I will do is I'll ask the questions. Normally the client would answer these out loud, but what I'm going to get the audience to do, and you to do, is just go with it and answer for yourself silently. So and people can replay this, right, and go back over it again and do the same on a different emotion. So essentially, this is a combination. This is an amazing technique that was created by my dear friends Siddhanta and Devi Ananda in New Zealand, and incredible technique where they've basically combined EFT tapping. So EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, neuro-linguistic programming, hypnotic induction, guided visualization. It's just like, it literally is EFT on steroids. What we're going to do first, we're going to locate whatever negative emotion is kind of there stuck in your field right now. It doesn't have to be necessarily right now, but if you think about, what you could do is think about the topic of relationships and self-love in general. And if that's triggered something in you that doesn't feel good, have a think about that emotion. Or if there's something that's happened recently that's triggered you, have a think about what that emotion is, and we can tap through that. So you can just answer this silently in your head. We're going to first of all locate what and identify what the emotion is. We're going to locate it. So the NLP part is locating where it sits in your body. We'll kind of look at what it feels like, what it looks like, that kind of thing. We'll start tapping. We're not going to use all the tapping points. We'll tap above the eye, side of the eye, under the eye, and then the rest is on your collarbone. When we stop the round of tapping, I'm going to get you to squeeze one of your wrists and take a deep breath in, and then hold the breath at the top, and I'll guide you through all of this, and then release the breath and release the grip on your wrist. And then I'm going to take you through a guided imagery and then a hypnotic induction, and then we'll kind of wrap that up.
Wow. Right. I'm going to enjoy this. So I'm going to sit back and relax, and here's the stage.
Awesome. Okay. So first of all, I just want you to close your eyes down and just really take a few nice, long, slow, deep breaths. Really settling in to the chair or the sofa or wherever you're sitting right now. Noticing where you're storing any tension and just breathing into that tension, relaxing more and more with every single out breath. And I want you to really tune into your heart right now and just ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? What negative emotion am I feeling right now? And name that emotion. And if you're not currently feeling a negative emotion, then like I said before, when you think about the topic of self-love or relationships, is there a negative emotion that comes to mind there? Or is there something recently that's triggered you and there's a negative emotion that you can use from that experience? So naming that emotion, is it anger? Is it sadness? Is it betrayal? Is it rejection? Whatever it is, name that emotion now. And really cranking up the dial on that emotion, really allowing it to be there, to see it, to feel it, to know it in its fullest expression so that we can release as much of it today as possible. Giving it a score 0 to 10, with 10 being the most amount of that emotion that you could possibly be feeling right now. Just give yourself a score of that emotion, 0 to 10. And then I want you to think about where you're feeling that emotion in your body. Where are you feeling that emotion? And if it had a color, what color would it be? Is it solid, liquid, or gas? Inside your body, outside your body, or both? And now again, really allowing that emotion to be there in its fullest expression, which feels so counterintuitive because all we want to do is run away from that emotion. But the more you can really see it, feel it, fully know it inside your body, the more you can allow it to be there as it truly is, the more we can release today. And so keeping your eyes closed down, we're going to start tapping above one eye. And as you tap, repeat after me, and you can say this silently as well. I release and let it go. Tapping on the side of your eye now, it's safe to let it go. Now tapping underneath your eye, it's okay to let it go. And now just tapping on your collarbone, I let go of all the anxiety. I let go of all of the fear. I let go of all the emotional pain. I let go of all the physical pain. I let go of all the worry and the sadness. I let go of all the anger and frustration. I let go of all the emotional and physical trauma. I let go of all the pride and desire. I let go of all the grief and the apathy. I let go of all the guilt and the shame. And everything else, I just let it go. I'm so willing to let it go. I love and accept myself. I forgive myself for everything. I let there be reason. I let there be love. I let there be joy. I let there be peace. I let there be light. And everything else, I just let it go. Good. And just squeezing hold of one of your wrists, giving it a good tight squeeze where you take a deep breath into your belly, holding at the top for a moment. And as you breathe out, releasing the grip on your wrist, releasing all the way down, and say peace. Good. Really being aware of that emotion in your body and reflecting back on what that emotion was and what score you gave it before the tapping. And has that score reduced? Is it the same emotion or is it a different emotion? Usually in a session, we would keep tapping through until whatever was there is completely neutralized, or at least a 2 out of 10 or less. But for now, I'm bringing you to a beautiful place. You're standing on the bank of a very large lake that stretches all the way out to the horizon. The sun is beaming down upon the lake, making it appear like a million glistening crystals glistening on the surface. This great, peaceful lake is stretching out before you. You're standing on the bank of this very large lake. The bank is covered in a beautiful, vibrant green grass, the greenest grass you've ever seen. You can feel the energy of the earth rising up through your bare feet, into your legs, into your abdomen, rising all the way up to the top of your head. You can feel the sun shining down onto your head, feeling its warmth and its nourishment. The energy of the sun is flowing down into your head, all the way down through your body, all the way to the soles of your feet. You're being embraced, comforted, nourished, and accepted by the universe that you are. Looking down into the water, you notice a little wooden boat tied to the bank beside you. Looking down into your hands, you notice you're holding a little wooden box. Inside that box that is all sealed up are all those feelings that you were feeling before the tapping. All of your frustrations, fears, and anxieties are in that little wooden box. You don't know what they look like, but you know that they're in there. So you reach down and place that little wooden box inside the little wooden boat. You untie the rope and gently push that boat out into the lake. As that boat drifts away from you, you feel lighter, brighter, more present and loving than ever before. Because the further that boat drifts away from you, the better you feel. And the better you feel, the further it drifts away. Because inside that little wooden boat is a little wooden box that has all those frustrations, fears, and anxieties within it. You don't know what they look like, but you know that they're in there. Because that boat is drifting further and further away from you now. And the further it drifts away, the better you feel. And the better you feel, the further it drifts away. It's getting so far away from you now. It's so far out onto the lake, appearing like a little speck on that horizon. You know it's about to drop over the horizon now, and it's gone. Now, in this moment, there's just you, the lake, the sun, the bank that you're standing on, and nothing in your hands, because there is nothing that you need, because everything that you need is everything that you are. Knowing this, feeling this, embodying this now. You are what the universe does. You be what the universe is. I'm now reaching up into the void and taking hold of your light essence spark. This is a spark of your essence that you sent back to the void when you went through that sense of loss, trauma, and pain. You sent that spark of your light back to the void so that one day you could call it back to be reminded of who you really are. Receiving your light essence spark back into your heart space now. Seeing your light essence spark glowing in the center of your heart. Seeing it, feeling it, letting it shine brightly in the center of your being. Now I want you to see that light spark build into an orb of brilliant, white, golden, and plasma light, growing in size, lightness, brilliance, and brightness, expanding in each and every direction with each moment that passes by. You see that brilliant, warm white light filling your entire heart space now. Now, as you see and feel that light expanding and growing in size from your heart center, you notice the darkness begins to disappear. Seeing and feeling that darkness moving out and away from your center in all directions as that light continues to grow and expand and become warmer and more brilliant within you. That light is constantly expanding out past the heart, filling your entire upper torso. feeling the light rushing over your shoulders, flowing down your arms like rivers of light all the way to the tips of your fingers, filling your entire upper torso, shoulders, arms, and hands with brilliant, warm, comforting white, golden, and plasma light. Seeing and feeling that white light growing and expanding and flowing down into your abdomen, cleansing and clearing each and every organ of your body. That light spreading down into your legs and flowing like rivers over your knees, down your shins, and all the way to the soles of your feet and the tips of your toes. That beautiful, brilliant white light continuing to grow and expand, sending the light all the way up into the throat and neck, all the way into the head, cleansing and clearing the entire brain, mind, and skull. Your entire head is filled with light. Your body is filled with light. Your arms and legs are filled with light. Your entire being is filled with light. If you are the light, there can be no darkness. Seeing now the light that you are, continuing to grow and expand out past the membrane of your body in all directions, growing in size, lightness, and brightness, going beyond the ceiling, beyond the walls, and deep into the ground until it envelops the entire country. That brilliant, warm light essence energy going deeper into the earth and further into the atmosphere until it envelops the entire planet. That beautiful light essence energy that you are, going out beyond this solar system, beyond this galaxy, out to the far reaches of the universe that you are. Knowing this, feeling this, embodying this now. Now I'm going to count you back from 5 to 1, and when I reach 1, you will open your eyes, but you will only open your eyes in as much as you know that you've got it. And as much as you know that you've let go of all those things that have dropped so far over that horizon that there's no way that they could possibly come back. Because 5, over the next 5 days, with each day that passes by, you will feel lighter, happier, more joyful and present to yourself than ever before. Because 4, you are coming back to this reality with a new reality, a new way of being, a new way of feeling, a new way of perceiving life through the light of the love that you are. Because 3, there are 3 solutions to every problem, 3 ideas to every challenge. Because life is not a problem to be solved, it's a mystery to be experienced. Because 2, you feel the light energy that you are permeating through every cell, molecule, and particle of your being, as it is simultaneously expanding out to the far reaches of the universe that you are. Because 1, you can slowly begin to open your eyes, in as much as you know that you've got it.
Boom. Wow. I went to sleep. I swear. And then I felt myself and I thought, oh my gosh, can you imagine? She doesn't get, you don't even get the whole glory of where's everyone going to find you? How do people get in contact with you? Because the host went to sleep. But that was
so yay.
So
I mean,
good.
normally that was like I went through that way quicker than I normally would with a client.
Yes.
Really give them that time, and we really want to clear a lot. But people walk into this room in a tears, and then they walk out just buzzing, feeling amazing, feeling completely different.
Absolutely. That is incredible. And I know that people, and I had some drop-ins actually while I was speaking to you, and we're going to be speaking to you on Edge Radio as well, but of people that I know would really treasure speaking to you. And, I really can't wait for that. So I won't say anything much more than that right now. But what about those people out there that are literally just requiring this self-love? They're requiring to have this transformation. How is the best way to find you? Now, remembering everything, all your links Anything that you've got that you want to give will be in the show notes. But what's the best way for them to contact you?
Yep. So I'm on Instagram as @Coach Carly Evans, and in there is a Linktree link which has loads of freebies for you. So my Project Self-Worth playlist that I did for myself is now widely available on there. So you can download a money and abundance playlist, a relationships playlist, a Project Self-Worth playlist. There's loads of links in there. There's links to my website, Facebook. So on Facebook, I'm Coach Carly, and my energy side of things is Phoenix Transformation. And my website is coachcarly.com.
Beautiful. Said like a true legend. Well, Carly, what can I say? You've said, you've said so many things that I know have landed for me tonight. I've had so many revelations myself, and I just know that you're going to bless so many people. So I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on here, and I can't wait to connect with you on radio.
Me too. I'm excited.
Okay. Much love.